Hey everyone. Okay, so if you have a child with ADHD, issues with focus, executive functioning, learning issues, and I think it was last week or even the week before, I talked about if your child starts their letters from the bottom and then works their way up. So I talked a bit about that in the previous video, and this is kind of related because this still connects to the, let's just say top to bottom processing as well as other things related to ADHD and so forth. So when a child has poor top to bottom processing, they end up with a lot of executive functioning issues that I discussed last week. Interestingly, whenever a child has a retained LANDAU reflex, executive functioning and all of that stuff can also be impacted. And what's interesting is one of the tests, and I say one of them, to determine if this is a factor, is the same for both finding out if your child has poor top to bottom processing as well as if the LANDAU reflex is retained. So what you want to do to find out is have your child laying on the floor on their belly and have them lift the upper part of their body. So their arms are like out in front of them on their belly as if they're doing the Superman. Okay. So their upper part of their body lifts off the ground. Their legs, feet, lower part of the body basically stays glued to the floor. Can they lift the upper part of their body off the floor like they would for the Superman, but keep their legs on the ground? And if it seems like they're straining, like I have parents say, yeah, they can do it. Then they send me a video. It's like, no, they can't because they're really straining to do that movement. They're really, they having to use a lot of energy and focus and coordination. They should be able to have a conversation with you about something else while performing this exercise. And if those legs are kind of coming up and down, or it's not happening gracefully, that reflex is likely retained. So when this reflex is retained, it can affect focus, learning, coordination, staying organized, and so forth. And one big factor that affects is posture. So your child might be kind of slumpy or just, be hunched over. They might have a hard time sitting up straight, all of those things related to posture. And this reflex should integrate by 12 months of age. And if it's not, then there is a lack of stimulation to the prefrontal cortex, where our critical thinking happens, all that executive functioning skills, all that type of stuff, related to focus, planning, impulse control, decision making, prioritization, all of that stuff that makes it possible for our kids to be successful in school and in life. So the other thing that gets impacted as well is the short-term memory. So things like trouble learning phonics sounds, math facts, all of that type of stuff. So if your child has a retained LANDAU, other things that you want to watch for that are indications of the LANDAU is retained are things like toe walking, ADHD, depression, anxiety, weak organization skills, poor coordination. So I see a lot of kids with handwriting difficulties. There's a lot of layers to that, but definitely this can be a factor with that. Or it could be gross motor. I mentioned short-term memory, and then just that thing of like hard time sitting up and it affected them just generally having poor posture. So difficulty focusing, lack of concentration, as well as issues with vision, near vision, as well as 3D vision, problems to coordinate upper and lower part of the body, hence the exercise that we do or movement we do to test, and hard time to keep their head upright. So just again, like they always are like this, they prefer to do some of these kids, it's so severe, they'd rather lay on their belly, on their bed, or on the floor to work, because sitting up straight requires concentration for them because it's not happening, just naturally, so to speak, or effortlessly. And so they have to kind of really focus to do that. So they can't focus on what the teacher's saying or focus on their schoolwork and also write neatly and process what they're trying to do in terms of their schoolwork and so on and so forth. So let me know, test to see if your child's LANDAU is retained. And I want to be clear, when you're testing this, it's not definitive. It is not the final answer if they can or cannot do this, if the LANDAU is retained or if they have poor top to bottom processing. We always also use I guess you would say symptomology, not just can they perform this exercise, because some kids can override it. If they check off, almost all the symptoms or half the symptoms or signs of a retained LANDAU and poor top to bottom processing, and that goes for any retained reflex, then we definitely want to work on that regardless. So let me know in the comments below what you're seeing. Is your child, struggling with focus? Do they have poor organization or handwriting? Do they have poor posture? A lot of kids today have poor posture, and it really becomes a vicious cycle, right? Where they might have a retained LANDAU and not have great posture. And then because their posture is poor, they're not doing certain things and their posture just gets worse. And because our kids are always on tablets and screens and sitting on long bus rides and all that type of stuff because of our modern society, they, it just one feeds into the other and exasperates the problem. So let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. And if you are interested in knowing more about my 6-month program, we do have a few more spots for enrollment. It's getting filled up pretty quickly, but just send me a message and you can learn more about my 6-month program through a free clarity call. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.